You're at a party. Music, people laughing, a drink in your hand, someone telling a story 2 feet away from you, and somehow, in the middle of it all, you feel emptier than you did an hour ago sitting alone in your room. That's not you being broken. That's not you being antisocial. That's one of the strangest quirks of the human brain, and almost nobody tells you it's normal. It happens in group chats too, weirdly. 50 messages a day from a dozen different people, and you still close the app feeling like nobody actually asked how you're doing. So today, we're going to figure out why a full room can feel emptier than an empty one, what your brain is actually measuring when it decides you're lonely, and why the fix probably isn't the thing you keep trying. Quick thing before we go on. If you've ever left a group hangout and felt worse before you showed up, you already know exactly what we're talking about. And if you want more of this kind of digging into the weird parts of being human, subscribing helps more than you think. All right, let's go back. Not to last weekend, to about 50,000 years ago. Picture a small band of early humans, maybe 30 or 40 people moving together across open land. That's it. That's your entire social world. No strangers passing through, no internet, just the same 30 or 40 faces day after day for your whole life. In that world, being physically near other bodies meant almost nothing on its own. What mattered was whether those specific people would notice if you disappeared, whether they'd share food with you in a bad season, whether if something attacked in the night, someone would actually come. So your brain never evolved to count bodies in a room. It evolved to track something much narrower. Do these people actually have my back? And here's the part that explains the party. Your brain still runs that exact same check today on every room you walk into, whether it's 40 ancestors around the fire or 40 strangers at a birthday party. The psychologist John Cacioppo spent decades studying this, and his framing is the one that stuck with me the most. He argued loneliness works like hunger or physical pain, not a mood, an alarm. Hunger doesn't mean you're broken, it means your body's telling you to go find food. Pain doesn't mean something's wrong with you as a person, it means step off the nail. Loneliness in his model is the exact same kind of signal, just aimed at a different resource. It's your ancestors' survival system screening that your actual support network, the people who'd come looking for you, might be thinner than you think. Which means that packed room isn't lying to your eyes. It's lying to a system that was never built to care about eyes in the first place. Here's where it gets more specific though, because loneliness isn't just one flavor. A researcher named Robert Weiss split it into 2 separate categories back in the 70s, and honestly, this distinction alone explains half the confusing loneliness people feel. The first kind is social isolation. Not enough people in your orbit, period. Not enough acquaintances, not enough casual contact, not enough of that background hum of belonging to a group. The second kind is emotional isolation, and this one's sneakier. It's not about how many people are around you, it's about not having even one person who actually knows what's going on underneath the surface. You can be embedded in a huge friend group, texted constantly, invited everywhere, and still be starving for emotional isolation's opposite, which is just one real anchor. That's the party right there. Plenty of social contact, basically zero emotional contact. Your brain doesn't average those 2 numbers together and call it fine. It runs the emotional checks separately, and if that one comes back empty, no amount of surrounding noise fixes it. Honest question for the comments before we keep going. Right now, do you have more people around you than you actually need, or more like 1 or 2 people you actually trust and nobody else close? No wrong answer. I just want to see where this comment section lands. There's a related idea from the anthropologist Robin Dunbar that makes this even clearer. He argued humans can only maintain meaningful relationships at a handful of specific sizes. Roughly 5 people you'd call your closest circle, about 15 good friends, 50 looser friends, and the 150 people total you'd recognize and place in a social context. Past that, names blur into strangers no matter how many of them follow you online. Your phone can show you a follower count in the thousands. Your alarm system was never built to read that number. It's still checking the same tiny inner circles it checked 50,000 years ago, and it genuinely does not care how many people liked your post this morning. There's actual data backing this up, and it's a little unsettling. Researchers studying college freshmen found something that seems backwards at first. Students often report feeling more isolated right after arriving on a campus packed with thousands of other 18-year-olds than they did back home with a much smaller circle. More bodies, less belonging. The head count went up and the actual signal went down because none of those thousands of strangers had passed the only test your nervous system actually runs.
Now, here's a piece of this that genuinely surprised me when I first read it. Cacioppo also worked with researchers Fowler and Christakis on a massive study of a real social network. And they found loneliness doesn't just sit quietly inside one person. It spreads. If someone close to you in your social circle becomes lonely, your own risk of becoming lonely measurably goes up too, even without anything happening directly between you. It moves through friend groups almost like a mood does, quietly passed along through the small, mostly invisible cues lonely people give off. Slightly more withdrawn, slightly more guarded, slightly harder to reach, even while standing right next to you. Which means the loneliness you feel in a crowd might not even be fully yours to begin with. Some of it could be arriving secondhand, picked up from someone standing 3 feet away who's running the exact same alarm you are, neither of you saying a word about it. And this alarm isn't just uncomfortable, it's expensive. Cacioppo's later work tracked what chronic loneliness actually does to a body over years, and the list is longer than most people expect. Elevated stress hormones, weaker immune response, even measurable effects on cardiovascular health, on par with some of the more familiar risk factors doctors warn you about. Your nervous system treats a missing support network the way it treats an actual physical threat, because for most of human history, it basically was one. A person nobody would come looking for was a person who didn't survive the winter. Your body still runs the math like that's still true. Stack that next to the Weiss split and something clicks. A crowd gives you volume. It was never going to give you depth, and depth is the only currency your ancient alarm system actually accepts. Quick one for the comments while we're here. When you're around a big group and something still feels off, is it usually the isolation kind, not enough people around you at all, or the emotional kind, plenty of people but nobody who really gets it? I'm genuinely curious which one hits more people watching this. So here's the twist that actually matters, the part that changes what you do with all this. If loneliness is a depth problem and not a head count problem, then the instinct most people reach for when they feel this way, which is adding more people, more plans, more group chats, more nights out, is treating the wrong number. More acquaintances can genuinely help to social isolation side. That part's real. But it does almost nothing for the emotional side, because emotional isolation isn't solved by volume at all. It's solved by exactly one thing: someone who actually knows what's underneath. And weirdly, one honest conversation with a single person can shut off an alarm that 100 surface level ones never touched. Which is probably why you can walk out of a party with 12 new numbers in your phone and still feel like nobody in that entire room actually knows you. Because by the only measurement your brain has ever cared about, none of them do. Yet. Think about your own last few weeks. How many rooms have you been in that were full of people? And how many of those rooms had even one person in them who knows what you're actually carrying right now? Now what you post, not the version you perform at parties, the real one. If the number for that second question is small, that's not a personal failure. That's just your alarm system doing exactly what it was built to do 50,000 years later in a room it was never designed to understand. And maybe that also explains something else. The friend who seems to have 100 people around them constantly, who's never once alone on a weekend, and who still, somehow, mentions feeling completely unseen. You've probably met that person. You might be that person.
It never made sense using head count as the measurement. It makes a lot more sense once you realize the head count was never the thing being measured. So maybe the real question isn't how to stop feeling lonely in a crowd. It's this: out of everyone in the last room you walked into, who actually knows you? And when's the last time you tried to be that person for someone else first?